What is medical negligence during childbirth? Is it going to always look the same? Is it one thing that families are supposed to be on the lookout for? And for birth injury or birth trauma attorneys like myself, how do we know? How do we know if negligence took place? Well, I use the term negligence. And in general, when we are discussing negligence from a legal standpoint, negligence breaks down into four basic elements, and they are whether there was a duty, whether there was a breach of that duty, which caused, number three, damages, four. And for damages, that's going to be injury or harm. And in this context, that's going to be to the baby. And this is possibly a traumatic brain injury like HIE, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. To be able to understand these issues, we have to use what we call medical experts. Medical experts are used to help us understand what was the standard of care and whether there was a departure from the standard of care causing the injury or the harm. To be able to understand what this medical negligence look like during childbirth, you've got to think of childbirth as a process. There's not going to be just one magic area or one magical thing to look at to be able to understand whether medical negligence took place. To give you an example of this, I'm going to focus in on one area so you can be able to just see through an example how this process will play itself out. When you showed up to the hospital, more than likely they put something on your stomach, a device on your stomach. And there was probably some wires hooked up to it, and those wires ran to a machine. And that machine is called the electronic fetal heart monitor. What that device does is it allows doctors and nurses, because I'm going to use them together in this example, labor and delivery nurses and the doctors. It lets them be able to understand in real time how well your baby was tolerating a vaginal delivery. It's looking at things like your baby's heart rate. It's looking at mom's contraction patterns, how many contractions she's having. It's looking at whether there were acceleration patterns. It's looking at whether there were deceleration patterns. It's looking at a concept called variability. It's looking at a host of things. And doctors and nurses, they are trained. They go to school. They understand how to read the readings on the electronic fetal heart monitor. Where problems can show up is when they don't read the monitor's readings the correct way. So you can see something like this. Let's say, for example, you have a baby that has late decelerations going on. Mom is having too many contractions. She's in tachysystole. There's minimal variability. In other words, the readings on the electronic fetal heart monitor have moved from a reassuring pattern to a non-reassuring pattern. But let's say the doctors and the nurses, they don't pick up on it. Even though the readings are putting them on notice that this baby is in a bad state or in a bad situation, they do not notice it and they keep going. They have mom to continue to bear down. But in my example, let's say that what they see with everything, they should move to an emergency C-section. But they don't move to the emergency C-section. Mom is allowed to continue to go. And then when the baby is born, baby has seizures, blue in color, maybe floppy, has to be handed over to the NICU. There are a lot of problems and challenges for the baby. And the family notices that the baby has suffered, or they learn that their baby has suffered a traumatic brain injury like HIE. In this example that I just gave you, we're going to focus in on those readings on the electronic fetal heart monitor. We're going to talk to experts and see what they say. Are they going to say that, yep, at this particular time, the baby was in bad shape, or at this particular time, based on these readings, the doctors should have done this. The nurses should have done this. That is how we are able to go through and be able to assess during this process, where did medical negligence occur? Now, I just gave you a simple example of, in other words, doctors and nurses missing readings on the electronic fetal heart monitor. I'm going to quickly give you another one. Let's say that during labor and delivery, baby, again, is in bad shape, and the nurses see what's going on, but they continue to defer to the doctors based on what is happening. The nurses also have an independent duty. Although there is a medical doctor there, nurses have their own independent duty to be able to say, look, this is what's happening to my to my patient, or this is what's happening in this situation. If the doctors are not doing enough, the nurses have their own duty to act. In other words, they have to walk up their chain of command if it looks like the doctors are not fulfilling their duties to this patient. So it's not enough for the nurses to just say, well, the doctor did this, and so we're just going to just close our eyes or look the other way. No, it doesn't work that way. Nurses also have their independent duty to be able to assess based on their training and their schooling and their understanding, to be able to assess what's going on. So I hope you're able to see during this process. I said I was going to talk about one, but I threw in that second aspect in there. But I hope what you can see is that as birth trauma or birth injury attorneys, we understand where the issues can arise during childbirth, and we know where we should look based on what's happening with the records. And that's why if you suggest or if you think that your baby's traumatic brain injury has been caused by a doctor or a nurse or the hospital, that you should talk with a birth injury attorney like myself. Because when this process is going on, if you do not understand the issues, if you don't understand the medicine, if you don't understand the medical legal concepts, you're not going to know where to look. You're not going to know what the issues are that are present in a situation like this. If you have more questions, maybe you're watching this video today because your baby has suffered a traumatic brain injury like HIE. There's a telephone number on the screen. I invite you to go ahead and pick up the phone and call us. We talk with families like yours all the time about these issues. When you call my office and you talk to my secretary, be sure to pick a date and a time so we can know when to return your telephone call. So that is important. In addition to that, I sometimes, because this video is on the internet, it's on social media, it's on other sites, I'm not sure who's going to watch it. If you call me and you are not in Maryland, you are in the United States, but you are not in Maryland, understand that we have to use what we call co-counsel or local counsel. In other words, an attorney in your state. And that's something that we can work to help you on, but I just want to help you understand that local counsel or that co-counsel aspect of things if you are not here in the state of Maryland. All right, that's going to be it for today's quick educational video. Again, I'm Marcus Boston, and I'm one of the childbirth injury and medical malpractice attorneys practicing law here in the state of Maryland. That's where I practice. And enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.